Welcome, my name's Jeff Bartels. I'm an infrastructure technical specialist here at Autodesk, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Jerry Bartels and Dana Judge. In today's 30-minute workout session, we are going to be taking our first look at the Project Explorer feature that runs on top of Civil 3D. If you're unfamiliar with the 30-minute workout concept, I'm sure you'll agree if you've ever taken a Civil 3D course in the past, there's never enough time in a Civil 3D class to cover everything that the application has to offer. Typically, classes focus on the need-to-know functionality. What do you need to know in order to do your job? The remaining features and tools are the type of things that you just have to pick up on your own over a career using the application. The purpose for us putting together these 30-minute workouts was to give us an opportunity to talk about and demonstrate some of those lesser discussed tools and to provide a resource for Civil 3D users to help fill in some of those gaps and help them make the most of their Autodesk investment. A couple ground rules when it comes to these sessions. Many of the examples that we show are going to be abstract in nature, and we do that on purpose. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. Once you understand the function of the tool, you can apply it to whatever situation works best for you. Since we're only together for 30 minutes, our goal is to always start on time and end on time. Don't worry about taking a bunch of notes during the session because these sessions are recorded. Anybody who has registered for the session will get access to the recording. If you have questions during the session, go ahead and put those in the Q&A pane. Jerry and Dana will be fielding those as we go. In the event there are unanswered questions at the end of the session, we will be getting back to you sometime before our next session. Likewise, if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with one or two of us regarding the stuff that we show here today, feel free to put that in the Q&A pane as well. We always enjoy speaking with other users. So the agenda today, we're going to take our first look at Project Explorer. This is actually a new thing. We're talking about a new feature now here in the 30-minute workout. The Project Explorer, generally speaking, is a one-stop shop where you can view, query, edit, create, and report on the Civil data in your Civil 3D file. Today, we're going to just do a quick intro of the tool. We'll talk about some of the challenges that it solves. We'll look at how we can use the tool to navigate, edit, and compare Civil objects. We'll talk about some best practices and keyboard and mouse shortcuts. And then I also have an option there where we'll be talking about getting more information before the next session. I say that because, I don't know if you noticed at the beginning slide, it said part 1. This is actually part 1 of the presentation. This tool does so much that we couldn't do it justice in a half hour. So we're going to have kind of a cliffhanger here at the end. And when we come back on the 17th, we're going to take an even closer look at the application. We're going to be covering even more of the functionality that it has to offer. So for today, these are the topics we're going to be talking about. The goal is that if you have access to this tool, you can start using it and being productive with it today, immediately after this session. And then when we come back on the 17th, we will look at even more about what this tool has to offer. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint free zone. We will be working live in the software for the duration of our time together today. Okay, all the housekeeping's done. In the interest of full disclosure, let me mention that I'm working in Civil 3D 2021.1. And I'd like to start by just talking about one of the challenges that the Project Explorer helps solve. On my screen, I've got a drawing that represents a subdivision plan. And I've got a lot of content in here. I've got surfaces, I've got alignments, I've got a corridor, I've got utilities and COGO points and profiles. So a lot of information. Let's say I'd like to get as much information as I can about this alignment. Well, I can hover over it, and in the tooltip, I can see the name of the alignment and the style. If I come over to the Prospector tab, I can expand alignments, centerline alignments, and I can see that alignment right here. I could expand this, and I could see if there are any profiles associated with this alignment. If I select the alignment, I can come up and choose Alignment Properties, and from here, I can jump through the various tabs and see information about station control, masking, design criteria files, or design speeds. Although that's not all, if I go to the Geometry Editor and click the green button, here I can see all of the geometric components that make up this alignment. And this isn't even all. If I close this, in the event I had calculated super elevation on this, I could open up the Tabular Editor and view all of the critical stations and slopes with respect to my super elevation. So generally speaking, depending on what I need to see, I may have to access one of many dialog boxes. I'm sure you'll agree that that could be consistent with many of the objects in Civil 3D. So this is just one of the things that Project Explorer solves. It provides a one-stop shop where we can view, edit, modify our Civil 3D data. So how do we access Project Explorer? Project Explorer was released as an entitlement for the 2021 AEC Collection. So if you have access to the 2021 AEC Collection, you will have access to Project Explorer. It is installed as a separate item, much like raster design or vehicle tracking. When it's installed, you will find it here on the Add-ins tab in Civil 3D. From here, I can click Launch Project Explorer to bring that up. I can also type Project Explorer at the command line. Another thing, the install media for Project Explorer can also be run on top of Civil 3D 2020. However, you will need a 2021 AEC Collection license in order for that to work. So you can run it in 2020 as well. When Project Explorer comes up, it represents a modeless dialog box. This dialog box is meant to be on screen all the time. If you have a second monitor, this is a great thing to drag over onto another screen. This gives you the ability to view your model within the viewport here, and then you can view the data of that model over in Project Explorer. The Project Explorer interface is divided up into tabs. Each of these tabs represents a distinct Civil 3D object. We have alignments and assemblies, we have corridors, we have point groups, and we have surfaces, feature lines, parcels, pipe networks, and so on. Notice that each of these tabs also includes a number. This tells us how many of each of these items exist in the model. As an example here, I'm going to select the Assembly tab. When you select a tab in Project Explorer, you can see one of 3 distinct windows. This window in the middle represents the object level area. This shows us the objects that correspond to the tab that we're sitting on. I've got one assembly in this file. If you select an object, there will be a preview up above. In the preview, you can hold your mouse wheel down to pan or roll the wheel forward or backward to zoom, much like we can in Civil 3D. Likewise, if I select an object, I can come down to the sub-object level, and down here, I can see an even more granular view of my data. Note that in the sub-object area, that data may span multiple tabs. Knowing this, let's go with our same goal that we had before. I want to find out as much information as I can about the Tartan's drive alignment. I'm going to start by going to the Alignment tab. And let me mention that this tab is actually Alignments and Profiles. Both of these coexist on this tab. If I come down to the Object area, I can select the Tartan's drive alignment. And in the preview, this is part of that coexist thing. We're not going to see a top-down plan view of this. Really, for a preview for an alignment, it's pretty much just the station range that we see here. Note that if I select the associated profiles with this, we can see how those highlight on screen. Let's go back to the Tartan's drive alignment. When I select that object, down in the sub-object area, I can see a series of tabs. Notice that I have a tab here for calculated stations. You will find that many of the linear items in your model we can view in kind of an incremental view. And you can set the increment. Currently it's every 10 feet for straight segments and 5 feet for curves and spirals. So just based on how this is set up on my alignment, I can see approximately every 10 feet or so the station, the northing, the easting, and if you're obsessive compulsive like I am, you can click and hold and drag these columns around. Northing, easting, notice I'm not seeing the elevation because I'm not choosing a profile there. And there's some additional information I can drag back and forth. So if you want that granular level of control and to be able to review your design in a linear fashion at intervals, you can do that. Let me click on Alignment Entities. Here I can see the individual components that make up this alignment, much like we saw when clicking the green button. If I click the curves and straight segments here, I can see where they exist in the overall stationing. Likewise, another nice feature in Project Explorer, if I tap the Control key, when I select an object, I can see that object highlight on screen. So I can see the individual components here. If I select the overall object, I can tap, you can see the overall object is highlighting. This is great if I get into a drawing where I'm not the original author and I just want to identify where things are on screen. This can be very helpful in that respect. Let's come down to Alignment PIs. On this tab, I can see a listing of all the PIs with respect to this alignment, and as I select those, we can see where they fall in the stationing here in the preview. Likewise, if I tap the Control key, I can see those highlight on screen. Let me mention that we can select multiple objects at one time just by holding our Shift key and clicking. I can grab all items between those two clicks. Or, and this is typical Windows functionality, if I hold my Control key, I can select items that aren't adjacent to a previous selection. If I select more than one item at a time and tap Control, you can see all of them highlight in both the preview and on screen. Finally, I'm going to come down to the super elevation critical stations. Now, I don't have any super elevation information calculated for this, but if I did, I could find this here. So this is just one place where I could see a lot of that information that we used to have to go to several dialog boxes for. I can see it all here in Project Explorer. Let's take a look at the finished grade profile. If I select this, nice preview. Once again, I've got a calculated stations tab where I can see kind of this granular incremental view of this linear item, station, northing, easting, elevation, as well as other information at the interval of my choice. For the profile entities, I can see the tangent segments and the vertical curves. If I tap my control key, I can see exactly where those are in the plan view. And if I go to Layout, Profile PVIs, here I can see the location of every PVI that's associated with this profile view. And I can control-click to see where these are in my model. Let's try a different tab. I'm going to jump to the Corridors tab now. And you can see I've got one corridor in this drawing. If I come down to the object area, we can see that there's just the one corridor there, Tartan's Drive. Now it's selected currently. I'm going to click off of this for a minute. I just want to show you that Project Explorer does a great job highlighting things where there's warnings or possible violations. Not only does it give us a shield, but if we look at it, we can see that the entire row there is displayed in red to let us know, hey, this is something that you might want to take a look at. If I hover over this, I can get the information. It's telling me, hey, that corridor definition is out of date. Now, I don't have to go anywhere to update the corridor. I can simply right-click on this, and from the menu, I can choose Rebuild. So a really nice feature there. I didn't even have to get into the drawing for that. When I select the corridor up here above, I can see a preview that's much like the section view editor that we have of our corridors. I've got the station menu here that I can take and choose from. I can jump backward or forward through the stations using these arrows. Note that if I put my cursor in this preview area here and tap the control key, I can see exactly where that assembly insertion is in my model. Okay, and this is lightning fast. If I click this menu again and roll my mouse wheel, you can see I can jump forward or back through these. I could use my arrow keys if I want to, and there's virtually no delay whatsoever. Much faster than what we would get through the typical section editor. Now, I had talked about the right-click menu to rebuild the corridor. I just want to emphasize here, it would be a good idea if you get a chance just to explore some of the other right-click options that are available. The right-click menu will change depending on when and where you right-click. Here you can see the right-click if I do it in the preview. Here you can see the right-click if I do it down here at the sub-object level. So a great place to look for additional functionality. Okay, let's talk for a second about some of the interface functions or keyboard shortcuts that we can use with this tool. I am going to jump to the Parcels tab here for a second. And let's zoom in. And notice on the Parcels tab, we don't have a preview area. Pretty much we just have the object level data and the sub-object level data. In this case, the object level data are the parcels themselves. I just want to show you that you can sort the columns here, much like we can in Microsoft Excel, just by clicking the headers. Now, I'm doing this on the Parcels tab, but you can do this on all the tabs. If I select a parcel and tap the control key, I could highlight that on screen. But here's a problem. I really don't see that in my current view. I have the ability to zoom to individual objects if I want to. If I select the object, I can tap the letter Z to zoom to it. Now it centers it on screen, and my dialog box here is kind of blocking my view, so let me slide that over. There we go. Let me select that, and I'll tap Control. We've had the Zoom To feature in Prospector for a while, but it doesn't work with every object in just native Civil 3D. Here in the Project Explorer, it works with many more objects. Not only can we zoom to individual objects, we can also zoom to their components. If I tap on the components here, you can see the individual segments that make up this lot. If I tap the Z key here, I can zoom in on the individual pieces. So where would this come in handy? If I go back to my Alignment tab, and I select my Tartan's Drive alignment and go to the alignment entities, maybe I've got an alignment that's a couple miles long and I want to jump to a particular segment. I could grab the segment here and tap the Z key to zoom right to that segment. Something that we can't easily do just using native Civil 3D. Another keyboard shortcut. If I want to select an item in the model, if I select it here in Project Explorer, I can tap the letter S. That will select it. This would give me access to the contextual ribbon. Let me press Escape to deselect this. Another thing, if I'd like to see the properties of a selected object, I can select it in the Project Explorer, and then I can tap either the letter A or the letter E, whichever one you like best. I'm going to tap E, and you can see it shows me the properties of that object. Now I'm doing this for an alignment, but it will work with virtually all the other objects as well. Let me also mention that I showed you that as a keyboard shortcut, but that is also available as a right-click item. If I right-click on this alignment, you can see right here I can select it. Right here I can zoom to the alignment, and down here I can go to the alignment properties. So once again, just a keyboard shortcut, also available in the menu. Let's talk about how we could edit Civil 3D data from Project Explorer. Here on the Alignment tab, I can see there's some purple text. Anything that's purple is an editable item. All you have to do is double-click on it. So if I want to change the name of this alignment, I can simply double-click on it. I get access to the name. I could rename it. Let me hit Cancel. I could add a new description. If I wanted to change the style, I could double-click on that, and I could choose a new style if I want to. Let's close this. I'll hit Cancel. Maybe you'd like to edit more than one object at a time. As an example, let me pan this down. Here we can see the two profiles that are associated with the Tartans Drive alignment. Maybe I'd like to change their style. Over in Project Explorer, I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'll select both of these profiles. If you want to edit more than one item at a time, you can right-click and in the menu, select your option. I'm going to choose Set Profile Styles from here. I can then choose my desired style. I'm going to choose Offset Right for this example, and I'll click OK. And we can see that change on screen. Let's hit Escape here. Now that we understand how to make changes or modifications, let's modify the corridor. Maybe I would like to change the distance between the back of curb to this edge of sidewalk. Now, normally, how would we do that in Civil 3D? We'd have to find the assembly, we'd have to navigate to it, we'd have to make the change, and then we'd have to come back and review that change in our corridor. Here, using Project Explorer, I can come up and choose the Corridor tab, and I can see here's the one corridor that I have. Under Corridor Baselines, I can see in my sub-object area, I've got an option here that's much like my corridor parameters in Civil 3D. I can see the baseline and the regions. I can see that I'm using this assembly called Tartans Drive Full. Now, I wish I could click the assembly from here and tap the Z key, but watch what happens. If I tap Z, it's actually zooming in on the entire corridor. Why? Because I'm on the Corridor tab. Let me flip over to the Assemblies tab. Here I can see that assembly that's being used by this corridor. Now, if I want to jump to that particular item in the drawing, I can click Z. It'll take me to it. But you know what? I really don't have to make the edits here anymore. I can make the edits right here. So let me pan this back up. Now, as a side note here, let me mention that my stationing is coming from top down, so this represents the right side of the road. I'm going to select my assembly, and if I come down to the sub-object area, I can see that this assembly is made up of 8 sub-assemblies. And just based on the colorization here, you can see that I can very easily rename the items on the right or left. As I select these, we can see how they highlight. I would like to change that urban sidewalk. I'm going to come over and I can see the properties. I'm going to edit the inside boulevard width. I'll double-click on it because it's purple. And we'll set this to maybe 5 feet. And I'll press Enter. Notice the change. Now, we don't see that update on screen just yet because the corridor is not set to auto-rebuild. But we have seen, at this point, if I come over here, I can right-click on the corridor and I can say Rebuild. I'm going to do a quick regen to let my top surface catch up. Okay, so we can make changes to our assembly. Anything that's purple, we can edit. Let me mention that this functionality was acquired by a third-party vendor. Now that it's being developed by Autodesk, the intention is to have even more things be editable. So as you start using it, if you don't see as many purple items as you like, that's something that the development team is working on. Now, maybe I would like to use this to edit some utilities. I'm going to split my screen to make this a little easier to see. Let's go to Viewport Configuration List, and I'll do 2 horizontal. And in the top view here, I would like to view overall, and then in the bottom view, I'd like to view just a portion of my profile. Let's come over to the Pipe Network tab. On the Pipe Network tab, if we come down to the object area, I can see that I have a single pipe network, just for my storm sewer. When that's selected in the preview, I can see that pretty much the entire pipe network is displaying here. When this pipe network's selected, if we come down to the sub-object area, we can see it's divided into 3 tabs. One that includes all of our structures, one that includes all of the pipes, and another one that represents the pipe run. Notice this is another interval item. This is, if I want that granular thing every 10 feet along all of my pipes, you can see as I click in here, it's highlighting those locations. So every 10 feet along every pipe, I can get a northing, easting, and invert for that, as well as the slope of the pipe itself. So if that type of granular approach is helpful in your design, you can get that here using Project Explorer. I would like to, let's zoom in here. I would like to edit a portion of this. Let me hover over this structure. I can see that's manhole 14. And I can see this one is manhole 16. I would like to edit the pipe network in that area. If I come over to the preview, you can see that it's showing me the whole thing. If I open these menus, I can customize what I see in the preview. I want to see everything from 14 to 16 here. Once again, I can roll the wheel back or hold the wheel down to pan and zoom. Let me also mention that the vertical scale can be adjusted using this menu. And it's also nice if you change that scale, if you close Civil 3D and reopen, it will remember that previous setting. So here I can see just that portion of the pipe network in the preview. Let's go to the Pipes tab. Maybe I would like to edit these pipes. Notice all the purple items here. We've seen I can double click on these and I can change any of these if I want. I would like to make a change in Project Explorer that might be a little more difficult using traditional Civil 3D. For instance, maybe I'd like to swap both of those pipes out with a different diameter. I'm going to select this first pipe and then I'll hold my Shift key and select the second one. Now, how do I know to grab these? I can see right down here the start and end structures for those pipes. Once they're selected, we've seen that if you right-click, we can make changes. One option that I have here is Swap Parts. This takes me to my part list. Let me drag this up, and I could choose a different size. For this example, I'm just going to choose 21 inch, so it's obvious on screen. I'm going to click OK, and you see the change here. We can also see the change down in the profile. Let's make another change that might be difficult to do on the Civil 3D side of things. Maybe I would like to run a constant pipe slope from this particular invert all the way up through this other structure. In my preview, I'm currently seeing from manhole 14 to 16. If I click Edit Pipe Run from here, it'll bring up a dialog box that will let me assign a constant slope for all the pipes between those structures. You can see right here, 14 to 16. That's what we have in the preview. I can choose to hold the pipe start or end. You can see as I adjust the toggle here, it exposes different items. Now my pipes were drawn from low to high, so the start is down here. I would like to hold the start, and I'd like to set and hold pipe elevations by the invert. And then I can use any of these options here to essentially calculate the invert at the other end so it knows what the slope's going to be. So I can enter the invert I want at the high side. I can enter the change from the low side to have it calculate the high side. I can enter a slope. You can see that it's averaged the slope right there to figure out what that is. I can enter a rise and run. I can assign pipe elevation offsets at structures. I am going to set this to, let's do negative 1.5%. When I press enter, you can see it recalculated the invert at the high side, and let me click OK. Now I show you that to show you this. Making that particular change would be challenging, to say the least, in Civil 3D. Very easy in Project Explorer. Once again, I point this out to show you that there is a defect in Project Explorer, something that's being looked at by the development team at this time. So I show it to you because you're going to find it on your end. Having said that, if you adjust the slope of a pipe currently, as of today, December 3rd, using Project Explorer, it may disconnect the pipe from the structure. Now, you can reconnect it. I mean, if you just grip edit the structure, you can get the structure to go down and connect back to the pipe. So let me show you a quick workaround. Knowing what we know now, if I go to the Structures tab, I can come down and I can grab these three structures, 14 through 16. I can then tap the letter S to select those structures in the model. All right, they're all selected. Now, if you remember when we talked about grips, I can hold my Shift key and I can click the grip at the center of these structures. Okay, so I just held Shift while I selected those. And if I click one of these structures now, this is where I could apply a rotation or a movement or something to all of these. I don't want to move them at all. I just need to touch them so that they go back down and meet with their pipes. If you look at the command line, you can see it says specify stretch point. I'm just going to type 0, 0. And when I press enter, watch the profile view down below. You can see how that's corrected now. Okay, not the greatest thing in the world, but still, I think that would be shorter to do that than it would be to use traditional Civil 3D. Once again, development team is working on that, and we should have a fix very soon. Okay, we are dangerously close to the top of the hour here. Let me switch this back to a single view. And I want to talk about how we can use the Project Explorer to compare one or more civil objects to another. On my screen here in the northwest, I've got a feature line that represents what's going to be a retaining wall. And if you look at the property here, we can see how it's kind of tapering down. Maybe I would like to have a 3-foot high retaining wall here, and I would like this to meet existing elevation here. If I go to my feature line tab, I've only got one feature line in this file, which kind of makes it easy. You can see in the object level there's my feature line. In fact, if I tap the control key, there it is. In the sub-object area, I can tap at each vertex. I love this. If you've ever worked on a feature line that's got a lot of vertices, that can be very difficult using the traditional tabular editor to know where you are. Not only can I see it in the preview, but I can also see it in my model. Now, if you have a lot of feature lines in your file, I just want to show you there is a filter here where you can take and filter them by site just to reduce the number that you see to make it a little easier to find. So I'd like to edit this retaining wall. When I edit the retaining wall, it would be helpful if I could compare this retaining wall to the existing ground surface. Note that there's a Compare To option here. I'm using this for feature lines, but you'll find Compare To on every single tab. Let me expand this, and I would like to compare the feature line to the existing ground surface. When I do that, it now displays the existing ground surface in here. And now that that displays, you can see that each vertex of this feature line meets the existing ground. Let me also show you one more thing. When you do a comparison, down in the sub-object area, if we drag this over, you can see there's some additional columns that are in white that say compared. Based on what you're comparing to, you will see some of that comparison data here. I can see that I'm comparing to the existing ground. There's my compared elevation at each one of the vertexes. And there is a way that we can change the order of the columns and customize that. We'll look at that on the 17th. For right now, like I said, I'd like this to be a 3-foot high wall at vertex number 2. This happens to be the existing ground elevation, so I'm just going to double click on that. And I'll make this 729.207. And I'll click OK. So now that's 3 feet high. Maybe I would like this segment here to be level. I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'll grab both of those points. I can tap Control to make sure that's what I'm looking at there. And if I right-click, I can access many of the options that we typically see in the contextual ribbon. I can set a constant elevation through those points. I can set a grade holding the start, the end, or the start and the end. I want this to be level, so I'm going to use the Set Constant Elevation, and it remembers what I entered before. I'll just go ahead and click OK. So this is a nice flat area now, and here we can see it tapering back to existing. So really nice just by using that Compare To feature. It gives me the ability to design feature lines relative to a surface. Now I could also compare this. Let me bring this down, and maybe I'd like to compare this to an alignment. I'm going to compare the feature line to North Street. North Street happens to be right here. If I do that, and I select a vertex, for instance, and I tap my Control key, notice that it will highlight that area and it will give me the distance relative to that compared object. One more thing, let me show you because we are right at the top of the hour here. We'll be getting back here in 2 weeks to look at the second half of this, but in our time away, if you'd like more information on the Project Explorer, if you come down and click the Help button, there is phenomenal documentation for this tool. It defaults right to it here in the overall Civil 3D help. You may be wondering, hey Jeff, how did you know about the keyboard shortcuts? If I expand about the Project Explorer window here, I can come down and choose keyboard shortcuts. And if I scroll down, you can see some of the ones we talked about. You can see there's also some additional ones here. So great information if you want to review that before we get together on the 17th. Okay, I am going to jump back here. So today, our goal was just to get in, talk about Project Explorer. We looked at that. We looked at how to find it. We looked at how to bring it up. We saw how we can navigate our civil data. We looked at how we can make changes to the civil data, both individual objects and multiple. We looked at how we could compare civil objects one to another. We discussed some keyboard shortcuts, and we talked about some best practices. We even looked at a workaround when it comes to the pipe networks for right now. And finally, I showed you the help documentation if you want to use that before we get an opportunity to get together for part 2. In part 2 on December 17th, we'll be sending you a registration link for this soon. We're going to look at how we can customize the tool, the column locations, and totally change the appearance of this to meet our needs. We can also save that configuration so it can be shared with others. We'll look at how we can use this to extract our civil data into custom reports, HTML, PDF, Excel documents. We'll look at how we can create dynamic AutoCAD tables of our civil data that will update whenever the model changes. We'll also look at how we can automate some of those tasks. We'll look at how we can export our data to a vanilla AutoCAD file if we want to. And then we'll look at how we can modify and save some of the preferences when it comes to units and just some of the colorization of the previews and things like that. And then I've got bonus content. There's always stuff we can talk about. All right. Just based on the time frame where we are right now, let me say that if we do have any questions at this point, we have them documented. We will be getting back to you on those. On behalf of Jerry and Dana, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. We hope you find these sessions to be valuable. We appreciate any feedback that you want to share, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in a couple of weeks. Thanks.